What up, Hyperchange? Welcome to another episode. Today we've got a special guest, CEO and founder of Arcimoto, Mark Frohnmayer. Welcome back to the show.
What up, Hyperchange? Good to see you again, Gally.
Yeah, great to see you. So you're coming at us live from Eugene, I guess. How's everything going down there?
Well, it is, we're definitely living in interesting times. I hope you're staying safe and healthy out there in New York. I think like the rest of the country, we're all in, essential quarantine mode, except for essential businesses and groceries and things like that. But, weathering the storm as best we can.
Totally. So I just got off your Q4 earnings webcast, was checking that out, and congratulations, you delivered, I think, 46 FUVs during the quarter, which was the most ever, your second quarter in production, higher than you guys were even targeting, I believe.
Yeah, well, we delivered 46 through the end of the year, and I think
Through
we
the end of
got
the
a
year.
couple of those in Q3, so 44 in Q4. But yeah, this was 2019 was obviously we call it the watershed year, but it was the year we went from long time R&D mode into actual delivery to retail customers off of our production line. So major step forward for the company.
Yeah, congratulations. Not many vehicle startups get, past. I'm sure you guys have probably delivered over 50 cars by now, so that's a pretty big milestone.
Yeah, we passed Tucker right at the end of the year, so that was another one we had been waiting for a long time. But it's the vehicle business is a tough one even to get into. Just getting to the starting line is a truly significant milestone. So that was a big deal for us, and then of course began the process of building up to scale and really going for it.
Yeah, I feel like it's such a bummer that this the illness 19 crisis is hit at the time it did, because it seems like you guys were finally like just hitting your stride after 12 years in existence, like getting the ground rolling from production.
Yeah, I would say it's never a good time to have a pandemic, as I think we all recognize. But it is. I give a lot of credit to our leadership team for moving very quickly to, one is just we put in place over the span of a few weeks more and more procedures to mitigate potential effects and to help preserve the health of the team. But I think ultimately made absolutely the right call to push pause when we did. And we're not letting this time go to waste. So we have, there's a lot of work that we need to do that we're doing, behind the desk from home to get ready for the next major stage of scale of the company. And then also we now have more than 100 Arcimotos built, and we're going to continue to get lots of great data from those in this time.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious, what kind of feedback have you been getting from these early customers? What are they doing with their Arcimotos? I wish I had an Arcimoto right now in New York
I wish
City.
you had an
Like, if
Arcimoto
the streets
too.
are empty, like this would be the perfect time to cruise around on my Arcimoto. Like, I've just been dreaming of being able to ride around one. But I'm curious, like, how's the feedback been from some of your early customers? It must be, some of them have been waiting for 5 years to actually get these vehicles. So they must be living the dream, I guess.
Yeah, we had our very first pre-order customer got her Arcimoto just a couple of weeks ago. That's my mom, and she has been having just an absolute blast driving it around. I mean, I get these text messages every day saying, I went and got more flowers at the flower store because I'm just having too much fun with it. And people are waving and asking questions, and I think the feedback you get on the street, and you experience this actually out in Manhattan, you just get a ton of positive feedback from people around you when you're driving it, and it's also just a total blast. So she mentioned basically this is something that's it's sort of a bright spot for her in the midst of a lot of real challenge and negativity. So, I think that's one sort of really, for me personally, heartwarming aspect of it. And we've been getting feedback like that from a bunch of our early customers.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I think the Arcimoto, that's one thing I didn't really appreciate until I saw it in person and we did the drive around New York City, was just how many people are stopped, and like in person, it really, you're like, whoa, this is so different and unique. And like the amount of people who stop and ask, like, what is that? Like just random people on the street, kids, old people, like everybody kind of is just like fascinated by the Arcimoto. So
Yeah.
I'm personally waiting to see one in New York.
Well, and I think you when you see it online, when you see videos of it, there's a tendency to sort of think, oh, this is a really super niche product. But when you actually get in it and drive it, and then see the reaction from the broad spectrum of people out there, you get a different view.
Totally. So, how is Arcimoto planning on navigating the shutdown, and how is it impacting your business? Because I know you guys are, you closed the factory in mid-March. You're planning to reopen as sort of the, as your local economy in Oregon reopens. How are you, at a high level managing this kind of unprecedented crisis?
Well, I think, at a top level, it's certainly been tough for the team on just an individual level to deal with. We've gone from 110 people working to around 35. I'm very glad that the federal government has put in place, dramatically expanded benefits for people who are affected in terms of work. So that has been a very nice comfort for the team. In terms of what it does for the company, I think what we launched our two fleet products actually right before the virus really hit locally, and so we have our rapid responder pilot now on the road. We have our first Deliverator pilot on the road, actually doing pandemic response work, and we're about to ship 2 more Deliverators out to a major national grocer to begin looking at a pilot of that program. So we are in terms of what we're doing right now, we're absolutely pushing forward on the critical activities that we need to hit the next stage of growth of the company. And that's primarily, one is laying all the groundwork, sort of doing all the homework on the scaling side. Now that we have 6 months of production under our belt, we understand what the throughput looks like from every single one of the components of the manufacturing process. And so it is a mathematical exercise to say, okay, given that, in order to hit 20,000 units a year of scale, we're going to need, X more welding robots and Y more lasers and, Z more benders and formers and this much more building space. And so our finance and production teams are cranking on that right now in order to put that full picture of scale together. And then that goes along with the efforts of really building the foundation of our sales pipeline with both our consumer vehicle and then with the fleet offerings that we have that are just coming online.
Yeah, let's build on that, because I feel like that's a really exciting tidbit that I found in your 10K, where you said a 60-day pilot program with a major national retail grocer is anticipated to start in the second quarter of 2020. We are targeting delivery of the first production Deliverators in 2020. So that sounds like a really exciting partnership. And I guess you guys can't name actually who it is, but can you tell us a little bit about what interested them in the Deliverator and maybe what use case they're actually using this for?
Sure. Yeah, and we'll have a lot more to talk about that program once it actually gets underway. But we ended up getting connected with some of the executives who were looking at, how almost every company at this point has some kind of a corporate social responsibility program in place, and they're all looking for how do we save money on operations and maintenance and so on and so forth. So the electric vehicle story makes a ton of sense for anybody doing delivery. But then the question came, they basically gave us a grocery list and said, can you fit this $300 worth of groceries in your vehicle? And so we went to one of their stores and loaded up the Deliverator first pilot, and had plenty of room to spare. Sent them the pictures, and they said, "All right, we're in."
Wow.
And that was maybe end of February when we had that conversation. And what has happened, obviously, since then is that home delivery of groceries has gone from being really a convenience, a huge convenience, to being a real critical component of health and safety, because people just there's a real risk that you have when you go to the grocery store, which is the craziest thing, but that's the world we are now living in. And so as a result, and I think you see this kind of across the board, is that every grocery store that's doing delivery is just getting slammed with delivery orders. So we see the Deliverator as really being a very good fit for that particular niche of the market.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been crazy to see the adoption of this entire grocery delivery space, which is something that has really lagged the broader e-commerce market. And then in times of this crisis where people just were forced to do it because they had no other option. So it's kind of interesting to see how these new sort of technologies get adopted in times of crisis. And the other sort of side of that lens is look at how clean our skies have gotten. That's another big side effect that, we've been doing. It's almost like we had this crazy experiment that would have never, ever happened, where what if every ICE car stopped driving for a month and every single city across the planet is having the most beautiful clear skies and air quality it's ever had. So I wonder if that sort of, this is changing the tone of some of your conversations that you're having, and people are taking this more seriously now.
For sure. And it's everything from the sort of the insanity of how we traveled before, that you and I are having this conversation on Zoom. I get very, very high fidelity image of you. I can see you face to face. And we've had that capability for years now, but there's just always been this sort of resistance and the kind of the idea of, well, hey, nothing beats a real face-to-face interaction. So people would have, they'd fly across the country for a half an hour meeting, which is crazy. And I think what's happened now is that really everyone in that set has now come to understand the convenience and advantage of having a lot of discussions, even face-to-face ones, online. And I think that's going to shift the way that we think about travel a lot, and really focus us on traveling and enjoying our local spaces much more than spending. I have a buddy who is a big sustainability investor, and he counted up that he'd spent 1,900 hours traveling in 2019 in ride shares, in airports, in planes. I mean, that's more than a full-time job just getting from place to place in order to talk about sustainability. And so now they're just reinventing all those processes, and we have a long enough stretch of time here, and this is a couple of months, is really a long enough time for people to get familiar with a new pattern. So I think some of these things, like delivery of groceries, like spending more time in meetings virtually, that those will persist way beyond when the immediacy of this crisis passes.
So another interesting thing in the midst of all this is you delivered your first rapid responder vehicle to, I believe, the Eugene Fire Department right down the road from the Arcimoto factory. And there's 50,000 fire departments in the US, and you guys have really offered them something that's never been before possible, which is like a third vehicle of not having to buy a huge fire truck. You can buy this tiny little vehicle that's way more flexible. Seems like a huge win and kind of a no-brainer for a lot of these smaller fire departments across the country. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about, what that experience has been like, getting that out in the wild and how that's advancing.
Well, we've actually been just kind of blown away by the response from Eugene-Springfield Fire to the vehicle. And we had a chance to sit down with the fire chief a couple of weeks ago, and they're really what he is talking about is really rethinking their whole deployment strategy and making vehicles like the Arcimoto really a critical part of that 21st century deployment model for what they do. Because part of it is that they have a mandate from the city and from the state to really look at emissions across the whole fleet. And they're saying when they look at the trips and the incidents that they go on with their vehicles, they're seeing a huge proportion of those not actually requiring the capabilities of a big fire truck, and many not requiring the capabilities of an ambulance. They have, a long time ago, they looked at two-wheeled vehicles, at motorcycles like the police would use, but those have never really caught on in the firefighter, paramedic world, because you just need to carry too much stuff with you. And so what at least what they have indicated to us is that the platform that we have developed strikes a really nice balance between carrying capacity and size and maneuverability. So the thing I'm really excited about with the rapid responder is just that it's, where the Deliverator fits into a whole spectrum of delivery options, everything from bicycle couriers to pedal powered trikes, all the way up to full size vans. In terms of the rapid responder, there's nothing else out in the market that really does what it does, or anything close to what it does for emergency response.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to see how much like demand, their organic sort of demand there is for the Arcimoto platform. Like, I know you don't really do any marketing, and because you haven't been able to fill all your orders, because you have like 4,000 plus orders that are still growing, a net backlog. I think it's almost like 70 million in potential revenue. And that's not even including, what if this big grocer signs on to do a big deal? That's not including all of these other fire departments, these sort of more fleet use cases that are going on. So I'm curious about, how do you think about, fulfilling all this demand, and how is the company, I guess from like a financial and business perspective, I'm curious, because it seems like you have all this demand and you have to sort of hit scale to be able to build the FUV profitably. So how do you think about this next leg of like hitting that scale? Because it seems like the hardest part of all this, which is generating actual demand for the vehicles, has been locked in, which is really exciting. And now it's just sort of about ramping and executing that production.
Yeah, and that's really what we're working on right now, is the plan for scale. One is to meet our backlog, which keeps growing. I mean, like you're saying, we really don't do marketing. We have a very small marketing budget compared to what we spend on the rest of the endeavor. And as we get vehicles out in the field, there's just growing word of mouth interest in the consumer product. But the reason why we're going after the multitude of offerings, one is that we need to get a firm foundation, some significant purchase orders that really, sort of prove demand beyond any reasonable doubt, and provide a sort of a consistent foundation for that scale pipeline. Then the other side of it is all of the work that we're doing right now on value engineering for cost reduction, as well as scale production planning. And all of those go into our application for the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Loan Program through the Department of Energy. And that's really, we've talked about that since, well before we went public, that is our ideal source of scale financing. And we have now gotten to the point where we can actually put that application together. We have the experience of building vehicles on our production system for 6 months. We understand what it's going to take to scale up each component of the process, and where the real wins are going to be in terms of cost reduction for additional pieces that we want to vertically integrate inside of our own production footprint. So that's what the team is just cranking on right now. And we're aiming to get that application in to the DOE as quickly as we possibly can. And we also see that this particular time, when we're sort of facing an economic cataclysm at the same time that we're facing a pandemic, that this is the time when it makes sense for the government and the private sector to really work together to push economic growth where it makes sense.
And that loan program, the Advanced Technology Manufacturing Vehicle Loan Program from the DOE, is something that Tesla actually used to get off the ground originally way back in the day as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could argue that without that, it would have been very hard for Tesla to be where it is today. And so obviously the bets that DOE has made, not all have panned out, but the ones that have panned out have been incredible growth drivers for the country and certainly for the mission of that program. And we believe that we're sort of an ideal candidate for the program, given where we stand today in terms of both customer demand, and then that we have already, in a lot of cases, that program was used for things that were not even in production yet. And for us, it is not about getting into production. It's about taking a proven production model and then scaling it up.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable to me that you guys have actually achieved that production milestone, because like you said, so many vehicle companies fail before even getting to that start. And I feel like Arcimoto's history, you've probably used like 30, 40, 50 million in capital to get 12 years to actually get to that product.
Yeah, I think
which kind of sounds like
we were on the order of $42 million in to get to production.
Yeah. So, okay. Right in the ballpark. But yeah, that's unbelievably, like, it sounds like a lot of money, but that's unbelievably capital efficient for someone who's actually, having a factory that's building your own vehicle, which is pretty crazy to me.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you about the relative level of capital efficiency of Arcimoto versus other plays going after this space. I think part of that comes from just the fact that the first couple million in came from me, and I've tried to do everything I can to shepherd every additional dollar in as though it were my own. So we really haven't. I think we have been efficient with capital. We've also been very focused on solving one very particular problem with one relatively simple platform. Obviously, any vehicle on the road is an horrendously complicated undertaking, but we're not building a full-size car. We're building something that is lighter, simpler, more efficient, and a lot more efficient to produce.
For sure. And so getting, I guess, a little off topic, one thing that I was reading your 10K that stuck out to me was your mention of autonomy. And I know this is something that the Hyperchange subscribers are probably all over. And something about, you have your software background. The Arcimoto is it's taken me a while to appreciate this, but I guess everything is sort of controlled by electronics in the vehicle.
Yep.
And so when you say you're designing it for autonomy, your basic, the way I think about Tesla, everything's controlled by software in the touch screen. Over time, it's just about software updates to like leverage, and everything's connected. So you can just push software updates to increase functionality and features. And I'm curious, about the Arcimoto, if you could just tell us a little bit about, now that you're in production, what sort of systems do you have in place so that these cars could be maybe upgraded for full autonomy, or how do you think about that whole piece?
Well, sure. We've designed the vehicle from the very beginning with the idea that it would be a platform for autonomy. So that, and what that means on the vehicle platform side is just that the throttle, regenerative braking, steering can all be controlled by wire. And we have not been in a position to date to develop the full autonomy stack on top of that, which is fine. There are literally dozens of companies going after various solutions to that problem for various applications. And so where we see the role that we can fill is providing, just really providing the rolling foundation for a whole host of different autonomous solutions. And when you look at the autonomy vision that's promoted in the traditional automotive world, it's like, well, hey, we're just going to take cars and make them drive themselves. But when you look at rideshare, 85% of rideshare is one occupant, one passenger. So the idea that we're going to just switch out all of these single occupant gas cars for single occupant full-size autonomous vehicles, to us makes absolutely no sense. We think it makes sense that our autonomous, robo-taxi fleet of the future is much more human scale. And then that way we can begin to reclaim a lot of the asphalt that we dedicate to cars for more human scale purposes.
Definitely. And so one thing that personally hits home for me is the Arcimoto Referral Program. And I've been bugging you about this. So I'm curious if you could tell us for all these
Code
people on the wait list.
hyperchange.
Yeah, I got a code hyperchange. What do you have in the works for the Arcimoto Referral Program? Is that something you're thinking about? Because I know a lot of companies like Tesla, with no marketing, as they start to get deliveries out, the word of mouth is crazy. And I feel like the word of mouth for Arcimoto will be like, your neighbor gets one, you get in a ride, and you're like, wow, this is epic. And then you place, so I'm curious about how you're thinking about that now that you're sort of on the second phase of growth.
We definitely have thought that a referral program makes a ton of sense. And per your prodding on our last call, we added in, the referral code into the pre-order page. And so we are tracking your hyperchange referrals as we speak. And we're also looking at mapping out, we were talking the other day about a swag bag for anyone who uses a referral code. So getting some free stuff for somebody who uses the referral code. So there's a benefit for using it. And then a benefit for you to have a code. So you and I had talked about if you get 100 referrals, you get an Arcimoto of your own, something like that. I think that's a great idea. And so we're going to be putting the finishing touches on that program here in the coming couple of months as we flesh out our full online sales process. And then also what you'll get as a referrer is you're going to get your own sort of Arcimoto homepage on our FUV Life domain, where you'll be able to put up pictures of you and your vehicle and kind of have a bit of a social aspect to it. You'll get your own your own QR code that somebody can just scan and drop right in, so that it'll be very easy for you to refer people from your vehicle. And so, yeah, we're definitely going to hook you up if you sell a bunch of Arcimotos.
All right, you heard that. I need 100 referrals to get my Arcimoto, so use the code hyperchange. But I love that FUV Life tidbit, and I'm curious if you have any kind of, the Arcimoto software.
Living the FUV Life.
The FUV Life, so I'm thinking of all these things, like how many miles I did in my FUV, how many states I went. Like, you guys have all this data. I wonder if that'll be uploaded and gamified. I'm curious, like, what you're kind of on the fun side, what you're kind of doing, because the second I heard that, I never thought of it. I was like, wow, that's a cool little layer. Like, there's sort
unlock
of a digital
achievements.
side. Yeah.
Went on 1,000 grocery store missions with no tailpipe emissions, all that kind of stuff. We'll definitely gamify it to some degree. It's going to be absolutely up to you, the driver, how much of your actual behavior information you want to share publicly. So we definitely keep track of the fleet in order to keep an eye on maintenance issues and things like that. But there is definitely a privacy consideration there as well.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds really cool. And do you have any other like tidbits of potential software updates or kind of like Easter egg features that we should be on the lookout for?
Well, our software team right now is putting the finishing touches on our whole configurator process. So it's going to give you a 3D view of the vehicle that you can swap through different options and different color schemes and things like that. It's actually super cool. Most of what you're going to do, though, in terms of, we don't have a sort of a secondary information display. We're really counting on your phone as your navigation device, as your main audio device, and then the Arcimoto app that's on that phone. We'll certainly put some little bits and Easter eggs in there. I'm not sure it will be to the level of complexity that Tesla's gone to, for example, but we'll make it fun.
Awesome. So what should we be on the lookout for later in 2020 as Arcimoto continues to progress here?
I think the big, Well, the big stories are going to be, one, getting the FUV into the hands of more customers. We have a bunch of folks who have been waiting for quite a long time to get their own, and particularly as the weather is getting nicer, we're getting more and more emails saying, where is mine? And so we definitely feel the urgency to get back into production and delivery mode. I think we're going to see a lot more on the fleet side to help really, again, build that foundation for scale. And then as I think we'll also see some new, the opportunity for some new business models around the usage of the Arcimoto vehicle. So we launched our first rental franchise, announced that in the third quarter of last year, actually got them vehicles at the end of the year, and then they opened operations on the rental side in quarter one. But that's more for the destination vacation side, and we think we've got some other interesting stuff cooking that would be more focused on utilitarian applications and delivery and so on.
Really cool. Yeah, I guess as an investor, it's exciting because I see all these little like seeds going out of like, delivery here with this big grocery chain, the fire department, the rental, the go car, somebody just being able to pick it up. So I think there's like so many, and I'm just waiting for like one of these trials going well to, each of these little deals could turn into a huge deal for Arcimoto, it seems like, if the pilots are successful. So I'm really rooting for the FUV to deliver. I feel like I know it will.
Well, and again, the real secret of this platform is that it actually matches the vast majority of trips that people take on the road, and that cross a ton of different applications. So they look like little niches, but you add them up and it's a ton of trips. So we see potential in a lot of different areas, and we're just trying to be very efficient about finding the right low-hanging fruit to pick first.
Excellent. And actually, I guess as the last question, I'm curious about that. Reminded me low-hanging fruit of what you mentioned on your conference call about really, optimizing that manufacturing process and coming up with a lot of improvements. So I'm curious if you could tell it, obviously I'm big on the whole pace of innovation theory. I'm curious about, I'm sure you guys must have learned like, so much in these past 6 months of actually starting production.
Oh yeah. There's no substitute for actually doing it. I mean, the best laid plans, you still have to go through the process, and that's why things like continuous improvement is all about the people who are building the product, coming up with process improvements, coming up with product improvements that then move up through the organization. And you don't get that until you're actually doing it. So we've learned a ton in the last 6 months about the build of the vehicle. We've learned a lot about the vehicle itself. We have, and one of the challenges I think also for an early stage vehicle company is that there is the suppliers that are going to be your suppliers at high scale are not necessarily the ones that are going to help you get there in the first place. And so there are all of these different sort of chicken and egg problems to deal with, not just in terms of the go-to-market of the vehicle, but then actually how its constituent parts and how it's put together. So we're in that mode now where we've got this window of time to make all of those transitions as we look to higher scale, and at the same time really gain the benefit of having more than 100 vehicles out there on the road, building the brand, building the fleet strategy, and getting us to the next level.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Mark. Always awesome to catch up. And I think I would leave all the hyperchangers and everyone watching this with the tidbit of how many vehicle EV startups do you see? How many of them have actually built and delivered 50 cars? And look at the amount of money they raised. Arcimoto with 42 million is already accomplish that. It's amazing to me how much press and what valuations all these other electric vehicle companies get without having delivered a single car, and they're spending hundreds of millions. So from a business case study, I love like the progress you guys have made. Of course, there's always delays. Things are always going wrong in this business, but even with all of that, the progress has been crazy and the execution has been incredible given the time and the budget constraints. So just wanted to give you props on that. And I can't wait to see, you guys continue to grow and kick ass.
Thanks, Kelly. Really, really appreciate you helping tell the story, man.
Yeah. All right. Hang in there, Mark. Stay safe. Peace out.
You too. Cheers.